Let's talk about best and worst case scenarios for the Boston Bruins over the remaining 10 games of the regular season.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, March 25th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Today on the podcast, we are going to look at best and worst case scenarios for the Boston Bruins over the remainder of the regular season. Let's just flat out say it. This is not a playoff team. They have a 0% chance of making it. So how can we maximize what's left in the regular season and set the table for a quick rebound next year? Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. The podcast is available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. If you're watching on video, please like this video and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. 10 games remaining for the Boston Bruins. They are 6 points out of a playoff spot, 7 points up from last place in the Eastern Conference, and they have the third worst point percentage in the conference, third worst goal differential as well. This is not a playoff team. They will not be sneaking into the postseason. So how can we best maximize the remaining games and try to have a better start to the season next year and really have this mini tank be just that, very quick and to the point? The biggest thing for me is to gain the fewest amount of points possible so that you can really improve your draft odds. This is a write-off season for the Bruins. Things have not gone well pretty much from day one. And Don Sweeney, by selling at the trade deadline and bringing in some picks, some players, some prospects, really was turning the page on this season and looking to next year. And there's really no point trying to keep winning this season and putting your draft odds further down. Right now, they're at 6%. We'll run the sim lottery later on in the podcast. And they have the 8th best chance of getting the first overall pick in this year's NHL draft. Right now, if they get anywhere from like 5, top 3, even the first overall pick, that would be a massive win for the Bruins. Last year was supposed to be a transition season. This one is shaping up to be the real transition season. And if they can get a top 5 pick out of it, a James Higgins, a Michael Misa, whoever, I mean, that would be a real good outcome from what has been a very bad season and would help them turn things around even quicker if they can get a guy who's going to be NHL ready. Now, here's the thing. Players don't really like to lose. And you have some veterans on the roster right now who do not care at all about getting a top draft pick because that's a guy that could take their spot on the roster next season. You know what I mean? You're not looking to give the organization a reason to boot you off the roster next season. Now, guys like Patrick Brown, Vinny Lettieri, they've been around long enough to know what the job is right now. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that you don't want to build a culture of losing here either, right? You don't want it to be something where this becomes the new normal for this group. that, just continuous losing has an effect. And we'll discuss that in kind of the worst case scenario and what effect that might have here coming up. So it's a delicate balance, really, having that tank mentality in the front office, but having that on the bench among the players, the coaching staff, like that's not where they're at right now. I remember even flipping playing ball hockey at college, intramurals. And even in that situation, you don't want to lose. You don't want to be chirped. You don't want to have people saying, look how far your team has fallen off. Where's your captain? Whatever other things they're saying about the state of the Bruins at the moment. That's not fun. And nobody wants that, right? You're not looking at David Pastrnak and saying he doesn't want to win. You're not looking at Jeremy Swayman and thinking he's wanting to allow all these goals and having such a terrible save percentage this season. You're not looking at Joe Sacco and thinking this is a guy who getting a shot at head coaching a team isn't wanting to succeed in order to remain with the organization or to maybe get a look from another team who could be in search of a head coach in the offseason. So it's a very delicate balance. And the best case scenario here is that Pasta still keeps rolling. We get some improvement here from Jeremy Swayman. Casey Middlestat kind of finds his way among the Bruins. You have Elias Lindholm emerging as a leader and an offensive contributor for this team. Nikita Zadorov establishing himself as a presence on the blue line. Marat Husnudinov showing off his wheels, getting some scoring in. I saw a Minnesota Wild beat reporter yesterday talking about how he couldn't even fetch a late round pick in trade offers, didn't really show much that he wanted to be at that level or put in the work. He's got 2 goals so far for the Bruins, more than Justin Brazeau. You have Jacob Lauko trying to reassert himself as a member of the team. Morgan Geekie still playing for a new contract. There's a lot of guys out here with things to prove. Your RFAs, your UFAs. So the best case scenario is that these guys all make positive strides, but maybe still not picking up some points so that they can indeed maximize their draft lottery odds. And that's a delicate balance, to be sure. Do we want them to go out and lose every single game? I mean, no. As a fan, you want to watch a team that is entertaining, scoring goals. You want to feel good about the team you're watching and not be made fun of by people who know that you're a Bruins fan right now, as is the case with me living in Southern Ontario. I'm hearing it all over the place. But and I've said this over and over to people who I've talked about the Bruins with, if it's temporary, if they can get a top 5 pick out of it, if they can use their cap space wisely in the offseason, then this should be a pretty quick turnaround for this team. And when you have a core of Jeremy Swayman, for now, David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, you have some of these new guys coming in. There's something to build around there. Get the right coach, pick a right captain, etc. Maybe get a guy who can chip in right away and get to some of these young guys. I didn't even mention that. Fabian Lysell finding his footing at the NHL level. Matt Poitras developing in the AHL so we can come back up next season. And whoever else, Georgi Merkulov maybe emerging from the AHL team, then that would be the best case scenario for the Bruins the rest of the way. Worst case, they keep losing. They lose each other. They fall apart. And there are even further erasures from this team over the course of the offseason. We'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly with no waiting around. So visit fanduel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. New customers get that $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at fanduel.com. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety personally. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, let's now talk about the worst case scenario for the Boston Bruins. And we are already maybe kind of seeing some cracks in this losing popping up. There was that incident the other night where Jeremy Swayman came out trying to fight Darcy Kemper. And at that point, it was still a close game. The fight doesn't happen. And then 4 more goals go in. The Bruins lose it by a score of 7-2. And afterwards, Swayman, pretty honest about his play. This from Scott McLaughlin of WEEI, quoting Swayman as saying, "I want to give this team a chance to win every night. Haven't done that the last 2 games. That's something I'm going to work on." I mean, hasn't been just 2 games, Jeremy. Let's be honest. He added, "I'm not giving up. I'm keeping my chin up. I'm not getting the results right now, but I owe these guys better. I owe a hell of a lot of people a lot better. And that's exactly what I'm going to do." End quote. We all remember the 64 million reasons back in training camp. We all remember the prolonged contract stalemate between these two sides, Jeremy Swayman and the Boston Bruins, and Swayman wanting to reset the goalie market, to become a 1A goaltender, to carry the load, be a top 5 paid goaltender. All of that kind of worked in his favor, but he hasn't been nearly good enough this season. And the last couple of weeks, especially bad. 7 goals on 23 shots on Sunday, 4 or more goals in 4 straight starts, 0-4 with an .815 save percentage during that time. Now, as I discussed yesterday, it's not all on him. It's not multiple things can be true here at the same time. Swayman isn't helping his team, but defensively, the Bruins make a ton of mistakes, defending the rush, leaving too many guys open around the net, and Sunday's 13-shot effort, Scott McLaughlin noted, marks the 8th straight game with 25 or fewer shots on goal. Now, that's a product of this team subtracting a bunch of guys off the roster, and that kind of purposeful ploy by the front office to minimize the team's impact moving forward this season for the purposes of maximizing their draft standing. But at the same time, Jeremy Swayman isn't helping this team, and he's not playing like the guy that they signed him to be. So it's good that he's looking in the mirror. Now, it goes kind of beyond that with Zadorov, who we know is not afraid to drop the gloves. He was asked if he appreciated, he was asked by Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic, if he appreciated Swayman standing up for teammate Marat Hudnustinov, who had been on the receiving end of a jab and a headlock from Darcy Kemper. And then we all know that quote. Is that what it was? Zadorov responded. He said, okay, I don't know. No comment. And Andrew Raycroft, who was on the Morning Brew podcast, his podcast, talked about what kind of went on there. And he thought that Zadorov's response stemmed from the fact that Swayman's teammates don't see him as a guy who needs to stand up for them in that way. Raycroft said, I've been around hockey a really, really, really long time. He played the position, and he knows for an absolute fact that none of those forwards that he's ever played with looked at him to stand up for his teammates. Can't convince him that any goalie has ever thought that ever in the history of hockey, that it's their job to stand up for a guy who's getting headlocked at the other end of the ice. Raycroft added, you don't go after the other goalie to set the tone. It's just not what it is. So you hear that answer from Swayman, who said he didn't like how Murat was being treated. He wanted to step in. But Raycroft says he imagines it's more just to put it on tape and say he did it. It's more that Swayman wanted to get a fight under his belt because we all know he's been open about that. He wants to have a goalie fight, right? So Zadorov doesn't think it's Swayman's job to be an enforcer. Joe Sacco kind of echoed that as well. It's Swayman's job to stop the puck. And Zadorov, clearly frustrated by the amount of goals that are going in. He said everything goes in. It's embarrassing. How many times we get beat by these teams scoring 6 goals, 7 goals. It's unacceptable. Not what we're looking for. Not much to say after this one being the game against the Kings. He pointed the finger at the whole team. People are getting pushed around way too easy, giving up grade A chances left and right. But everything goes in is clearly pointed at the goaltender. I said the other day that key to a Bruins turnaround is Swayman getting back to the Swayman that we know and love. The fun-loving, unflappable guy who is just so good in the net and nothing seems to get past him. That's not at all what we've got. He's been very flappable so far this season. And worst case is that Swayman loses his teammates, right? And that they're kind of sick of, Brad Marchand, when he was here, talked about how he wasn't going to be public in the media about his contract situation. Jeremy Swayman was very public. Did that rub people the wrong way? Is his trying to steal the show in Los Angeles, did that rub people the wrong way? Well, seemingly with regard to Nikita Zadorov. And don't forget, he has a no-move clause that kicks in on July 1st. So if there is a seeming rift between Swayman and his teammates, or he's not fitting in with the group, do they look to move him? That would be a bad scenario because his trade value is obviously not high at the moment. A team would effectively be taking on, it'd be like signing him to a 7-year, $8.25 million contract at this point. And based on this season, is anybody wanting to take that on? I don't know. You could argue the Bruins, maybe they go with Korpisalo, Michael DiPietro next season as a cheaper tandem and then have more money to spend on scorers, which they definitely need. Might not be the worst thing, but trading Swayman, who was set up to be the guy for quite a long time, a franchise-type goalie, for kind of pennies on the dollar, probably less, maybe comparable to what you got for Ullmark, probably less, really. It's kind of a worst-case scenario. So the Bruins losing games is one thing, but losing the plot, losing each other, losing the room, there's no leadership really. I mean, there's still some leadership there, but a bunch of guys who wore season A's are gone. So maybe there's kind of a fight to establish yourself as a leader in the room right now. McAvoy's not there on a daily basis. He's maybe your next captain. That's, everything kind of going off the rails here. Standings wise is one thing, but in the room is a completely different thing. And we hope, there's frustrations that come up. That's natural. But it would be perhaps calamitous if it blew up to the extent where guys are having to be moved out in the offseason that are meant to be core players moving forward. Anyways, that's my take on the best and worst case scenarios for the Bruins over the next 10 games. Hit me up on social media or on YouTube if you have any differing opinions. And when we come back, we're going to do our daily Tankathon update and run the draft simulator. There's nothing like watching basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I just checked the Game Time app. There are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. I'm looking at baseball tickets as well, with the season set to start this week. Seat views before you buy. There's no surprise fees, a lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? It is game time. It wasn't long ago in the history of this podcast that we would do power rankings. We would do the cup check, looking at where the Bruins ranked among the top 5 teams in the NHL. Now we're doing tank watch here for the next couple of weeks. A look at where the Bruins fit among the bottom 10, maybe even 5 teams by the time we get into it here towards the end of the season. Right now, again, you have San Jose, Chicago, well entrenched as the worst teams in the NHL, by far the best odds of getting the top overall pick. Then you have Nashville, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and our Boston Bruins in 8th, tied with Pittsburgh in points with a .479 point percentage. Losers of 6 in a row. The Bruins are 2-7-1 over their past 10 games. So they're really tanking here, intentionally or not. And there's a real opportunity here. You see Seattle, Buffalo have games in hand, as do Anaheim, Boston's next opponent. So that could be a real tank, big game for the tank tomorrow night. Losing to Anaheim instead of jumping back ahead of them and going back down to 9th. They could also fall behind Seattle, Philadelphia, maybe even Buffalo here before things are said and done. But for today, let's run the lottery as it stands. Yesterday, if you tuned in, hit the number 1 overall pick twice. So let's run it, see what happens today. Number 1 time, we have the Bruins. Why is it taking so long to run? Dropping down to 9th. That would be less than ideal. The Rangers here jumping up from 10th to 1st overall. And that would be a real conspiracy theory fueler for those of you who believe the NHL may or may not kind of work the system here in terms of the lottery balls. So that's a bad outcome for the Bruins. Let's run it again, see what happens. We have Buffalo moving up to the 1st overall pick, San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Boston staying level at the 8th pick. So we have 9th, we have 8th. Here we have the Bruins sticking again in 8th, Buffalo with the first overall pick once again, followed by San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Philly. Good day for the Sabres. Here we have the Bruins sticking in 8th, Chicago moving up, Nashville moving up. Bad news for the San Jose Sharks. Finally, Boston sticking in 8th once again with Nashville, Chicago moving up. So, not the great outcome here for the Bruins when it comes to today's draft lottery projections. But again, with each additional loss this season, that will only improve their standing. And a big game, tank-wise, tomorrow night against the Anaheim Ducks. We'll preview that one on tomorrow's podcast. We will bring you all the latest on the Boston Bruins as well, complete updates from practice, if there's any roster changes, and on-off ice happenings with regards to our Boston Bruins, because that's what we do every day here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we will talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.